So a few days ago, the roadmap for the next 4 months in Lost Ark dropped, going over the content that we will be receiving from May till August. There's some exciting stuff in this roadmap and also some questionable release times, I guess I'll say, which I'm kind of expecting one of them to change at least, which I'll talk about when we get to that. So what's actually in the roadmap? Well, in terms of classes, we will be getting both Slayer and Aeromancer, the two remaining classes that we are still missing so far. We'll be getting Elgacia with its accompanying Kyangle Abyss dungeons, Clown Hell mode, and Akan with all the other content that comes with that raid as well, because Akan is another soft reset like Brelshaza was, so we'll have new materials, and to farm those we'll have new Chaos dungeons and a new Guardian raid, Sonavel. And then we're also getting 2 rounds of quality of life updates. So that's what we're getting, but when are we getting it? Well, Slayer is coming out in May, and looking at some event items that are expiring, it'll most likely be May 10th, so 2 weeks from now, which is kind of fast considering that she came out late January for Korea. Alongside Slayer, we'll also have some quality of life changes like the Ebony Cube, which will consolidate Boss Rush and Cube into one activity, and another one that I want to mention is the new player improvements, like for example getting free battle items to use in low level Guardian raids that will also teach you about these items and when you should use them. Thing that will be great for new players. There's also some more quality of life changes, but we'll get a more detailed breakdown of those when we get the actual patch notes. June will then be Elgacia, and we're most likely going to get the reworked version of the Kyangle Abyss dungeons as well, because they got a patch yesterday in Korea which made some great improvements to those dungeons, and it would make sense that we are getting this reworked version from the start, so that should be great. Elgacia will also open up the last 25 floors of Fortune Spire, so you can go and clear that one out as well. July will then be the Kakelseidon Inferno mode Legion raid and the Elgacia Epilogue, which is going to be some extra quests, and then we're also getting the second round of quality of life updates. And then in August we're getting Aeromancer and the Akan Legion raid patch with all of its accompanying content. Now, I'm quite happy with this roadmap for all but one thing: Aeromancer. For me personally, I wanted to play Aeromancer in my main roster, so it being pushed back for Slayer is a bit of a bummer, but if I were to take my own preference out of it, I don't think that releasing it alongside a big raid patch like Akan is a good idea. They did it with Summoner and Brelshaza back in December. They said that looking back on it, it wasn't a good idea. So for Artist, while it was scheduled to release with the Brelshaza hard mode patch, they ended up bringing it forward by a month, so Artist and Brel hard mode would have separate patches. Now with Aeromancer, they're doing it again. Why? I feel like they're just going to be bringing it a month earlier as well in the July patch, because July is kind of empty for the majority of players. Sure, we're getting a few quests in Elgacia and Kakelseidon Hell mode, but there's only a very small portion of players that actually does Hell modes. So for the majority of the player base, July doesn't really have that much content. And they said it themselves, classes are content, so while I might be biased towards wanting Aeromancer earlier, even if the classes were reversed, I still feel like the second class should be released in July before Akan comes out. In terms of Slayer in May, it's actually kind of exciting, and from a business standpoint I totally get it, because there's 2 big reasons why they should release Slayer first, and I'm not referring to her chest here. First off, they just released Artist, so if they were to release Aeromancer first, then they would be releasing 2 specialist classes back to back. So them wanting to mix things up a bit makes sense, because they want to appeal to all of the audiences. We just got our Ayaya class, now give us the big mummy. It's what people have been wanting, so mixing it up makes sense. The other one is that summer skins are on the horizon, and you can be sure that they want to capitalize on all the Coomers wanting sexy outfits for their Slayers. So again, it just makes sense. Slayer also looks pretty fun to play, so I'm just gonna make one to pass the time, and who knows, maybe I'll end up playing her more than I am expecting. If anything, it'll be a fun alt to play around with for a little while. Now, back to why Slayer in May is exciting. So far, we've had to wait a very long time for new classes to be introduced into our version of the game. Just look at Aeromancer. By the time that we'll be getting her, she'll have been out for about a year, maybe even longer at that point. Slayer is about a 4-month delay. Now, I do know that they wanted to stagger class releases between bigger content updates, which is why it's taken so long for us to catch up with Korea in terms of the classes that are out, but after Akan, we're pretty much close to being caught up with the actual raid content. I think currently the only thing that we'd be missing is the Voldike Abyss dungeons, and by the time that we get Voldike, Tiamat will probably be out as well, but they can't really push content patches on a much faster schedule because players need to have the time to catch up. However, for classes they don't have to wait, so Slayer being a somewhat fast release for us compared to what we've had before could mean that when Korea gets Soul Eater, we might be getting it fairly quickly after that, and similar things for new classes coming past that, which is really exciting. In terms of the content timeline then, I think it's fine. Elgasia's Abyss dungeons will be 1540 for normal mode and 1580 for hard mode. I already have a few alts sitting at 1540, so they'll be able to enjoy that content, and I imagine I'll be able to get my main to 1580 by that time as well. Akan then being 2 months after that is totally fine. Maybe I'll even hone a bit more to make my first clear of the raid a bit more comfortable, but I'm certainly not planning to push all the way to 1600. For those that don't know, Akan normal mode is 1580, Akan hard mode is 1600. So I'm just going to be doing the normal mode on release, and then a few weeks later I'll hop into hard mode after I enjoyed the reduced honing costs and the higher rates that come with the soft reset that Akan brings. And who knows, maybe by the time I'll even have an alt or two at 1580 as well. It's certainly not that out of reach. So overall, I feel like the roadmap is pretty nice. The only thing that they should change in my opinion is the release of Aeromancer in July instead of August, so that it doesn't give us this seemingly empty patch in July and an overcrowded one in August. But that's the roadmap, those are my thoughts on it, so I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.